Before we start, if you value serious, ground-level military history, the kind that looks at how people actually survived rather than how wars are mythologized, subscribe to the Survival Record. This channel exists for viewers who want depth, not shortcuts. Most people think of World War II weaponry in terms of industrial might, mass-produced rifles, tanks rolling off assembly lines, aircraft factories working around the clock. What gets lost is how often that system failed the individual soldier. Shortages, isolation, partisan warfare, and chaotic retreats meant that many combatants fought for long stretches without proper equipment. When that happened, survival depended less on doctrine and more on improvisation. Across every front, soldiers quietly modified, repurposed, and invented weapons using whatever they could find. These weren't acts of desperation alone. They were calculated responses to the reality that modern war regularly outpaced logistics, planning, and command. Understanding these adaptations reveals a side of World War II that still shapes military survival thinking today. The battlefield often forced soldiers to turn ordinary objects into close-range weapons. In urban fighting and dense terrain, especially on the Eastern Front and in occupied cities, close combat made standard rifles unwieldy. Soldiers frequently reinforced entrenching tools, small folding shovels already issued for digging, with sharpened edges or weighted handles. German and Soviet troops both documented using these tools as melee weapons when ammunition ran out or surprise encounters occurred. The lesson here wasn't brutality, it was practicality. An object already carried, already balanced for use, could be quickly adapted for last-ditch defense. Modern military training still emphasizes tool dual use because of these experiences. Improvised grenades filled the gaps when factories could not keep up. Partisan groups and resistance fighters rarely had access to standardized explosives. In occupied Europe, glass bottles, tin cans, and scrap metal became delivery systems for homemade fragmentation devices. Explosives were scavenged from unexploded ordnance or stolen from industrial sites, then packed with nails, ball bearings, or debris. These weapons were crude, dangerous to assemble, and inconsistent, but they allowed lightly armed fighters to ambush convoys and disrupt supply lines. The long-term impact was significant. Post-war counterinsurgency doctrine paid close attention to how improvised weapons could offset conventional superiority. Soldiers learned quickly that wire cloth and rubber could become silent killing tools. Noise discipline mattered, especially for reconnaissance units and raiding parties. Some soldiers fashioned garrotes from parachute cord electrical wire, or even boot laces reinforced with scrap metal. These tools were not standard issue, but they reflected a need for silent incapacitation during patrols and prisoner captures. The uncomfortable reality is that modern special operations doctrine around silent takedowns has roots in these informal battlefield adaptations, refined later into regulated equipment. Empty fuel cans and ration tins became directional mines in defensive positions. When formal anti-personnel mines were unavailable, soldiers converted fuel cans, ration containers, and even cooking pots into pressure or tripwire explosives. These devices were especially common during static defenses, such as the Italian campaign or the defense of Pacific Island positions. Explosives were often combined with scrap metal to increase effectiveness. Aircraft crews improvised weapons from survival kits after being shot down. Downed airmen behind enemy lines often had only minimal equipment. Some fashioned spears or clubs from aircraft debris, combining aluminum struts with seat fabric or wiring. These weren't meant for sustained combat, but for deterrence and survival against patrols or wild animals while evading capture. Survival training programs that emerged after the Second World War, especially for air crews, directly incorporated these lessons, emphasizing adaptability over reliance on issued gear. Bayonets were modified when their original design failed local conditions. In jungle environments like New Guinea and Burma, standard bayonets proved too long and prone to snagging vegetation. Soldiers shortened blades, reshaped tips, or even replaced handles with locally sourced wood better suited to humidity. What ties all of these examples together is not ingenuity for its own sake, but necessity under constraint. These soldiers weren't inventors chasing clever ideas. They were professionals and civilians forced to confront the limits of supply chains, command structures, and standardized thinking. Their solutions were local, temporary, and often dangerous, but they worked often enough to matter. Remembering these stories matters because they challenge comforting narratives about war as a clean contest of machines and plans. They remind us that preparedness is not about having the best equipment, but about understanding how to adapt when systems fail. For modern survivalists, historians, and military planners alike, these lessons remain relevant. If you value this kind of grounded, overlooked history, subscribe to the Survival Record. Share this video with others who care about understanding the realities beneath the surface of 20th century conflict.